Hey guys, welcome back. Today we're going to be taking a look at the new Amethyst Obsessions palette from Huda Beauty, one of her 5 new mini palettes that have been released. This one arrived on my porch this morning and I had to immediately play with it. So if you want to see how I created this eye look, I will be putting that after the review. And if I'm really on the ball, I will timestamp it in the description bar down below so that if you just want to skip to that, then you can. But if you want to hear the review, then Amethyst Obsessions, let's do this. Alright, so like I said, this just arrived on my porch today, so I haven't had a chance to really extensively play with it. But for this eye look, I did use 8. Is that right? 8? 8 of the 9 shadows that are in here. So let's start from the outside, work our way in, and then I'll let you know what my feelings were, at least on initial application, with respect to the formula. So as you can see, I've got a couple others to compare it to. These are the original ones, exact same size, exact same style. The only thing that's different is that this one has a colored outer package rather than the black that all of her other mini palettes have had. Still has the same naming system on the edge here, which I really do appreciate. So even though it's purple and obviously you can pick it out quite easily, I like that they've maintained the naming on here. Side note, Juvia's Place, I have them all stacked back here. All of them except for the very bottom one, the Masquerade palette. All of them have the name on the side. You have no idea how much the fact that this one doesn't have a name on it drives me insane. Yes, it sits behind me and I can't see it, but when I reach for one of them, it's there. It's like a little tiny finger in the air at me. I don't know what it is. I think I have a touch of OCD. Moving right along, I'm happy that they have it on here and that they've maintained that consistency. Frankly, it wouldn't have bothered me if they just kept this in the same black packaging as all the originals, but it is part of a limited edition set all about precious stones, so I get where they're going with it. Each of these individual palettes has its own very distinct color story. There's green, there's blue, there's red, purple, and then like a orangey brown one as well. So it's in keeping with the theme of the collection, so I'm not upset about that. The nice thing with this packaging is that there is a very strong magnetic clasp to it. It's not going to come flying open. It does bend all the way backwards, which I really like, just for the convenience of being able to hold it in your hand. And there is a fully functional mirror there as well. Inside, there are 9 eyeshadows. There they are there, and you can obviously see that the color story here is purple. So you have a nice mix here. There are matte shadows, so these 3 are matte. The ones straight down the middle are all foiled, and then you have some more what I'd consider to be more satin shimmer kind of finishes. So you do have a nice mix of what's going on here. Obviously, like I said, you can see that they are all quite purple, but you do have a variety of tones of purple here. So you have more plummy shades, you've got almost pink kind of purples, and then a more blue-based purple over here. And then some of these have a little bit of a reflect to them as well. The last bit of information that I'll give you before we dive into the actual shadows themselves is the price, and these retail for $35 Canadian here at Sephora, and they'll be slightly less than that in the US and on the Huda Beauty website. Frankly, I think that's a fair price, and I love that brands are coming out with more and more of these mini palettes because you get a nice curated collection of higher end eyeshadows at a price that's really not that far off from what the drugstore is now charging for palettes. So I think it's good value for money. So, if you've been around for a while, we all know that I have terrible swatching skills. However, I'm going to give you finger swatches. Unprimed arm, finger swatch, 1 swipe down, just to see baseline what it is that we're working with. And I'm going to group them, not how they're laid out in the pans here, but I'm going to group them in terms of mattes and shimmers and foiled shadows, just so that you can see each family, I guess, or each finish. So here we go with the matte shadows. That was a little close, but there we go. And then these are the more satiny, shimmery finish. And then finally the foiled shadows here. Alright, so let's take it finish by finish. So let's talk about the matte shadows first. What I can say is, in applying them, I had no issues blending them out and building up pigmentation. I will say that the deep eggplant shade here, you can see it in the swatch, there is a bit of patchiness right at the top there and then trailing out to the end. And it's not quite as deep and dark as it looks in the pan here. However, it does build up quite nicely with a brush. So although the finger swatch is a little bit lackluster in my opinion, it's really not a difficult shade to work with. And frankly, I would rather it err on the side of less pigmented but buildable than full pigmentation and not blendable. One you can work with, one you really can't. So these are completely workable shadows. I was quite impressed with this more pink toned one here. That's what I have in my transition area. You will see me apply it if you watch the tutorial that's coming up. But it was very nicely pigmented for being a light shadow. And then this one I used to sort of blend between the two of these, and I had no issues with that either. With these matte shadows as well, there was not a lot of kick up in the pan from the brush. There was some, but nothing that would alarm me or nothing that would sort of make me question the formula of the shadows themselves. I've said it before, I don't mind some kick up. Frankly, if there is no kick up whatsoever, sometimes that can mean that your shadows are a little hard panned or they're just not, they're not picking up on the brush, and then you have a whole other level of frustration. But with these matte shadows, it wasn't trickling down onto my cheeks, and I really didn't find it a problem to work with. When I picked them up with the brush and tapped off the excess, a good amount of product still stayed on the bristles, so it's not so soft that it all just flies away. So overall, I'm really happy with the matte shadows in here. Moving on to the satin shadows, these three here. So I do have this one on my eyes, and did I use all 8? What did I use? I used 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so I take back what I said earlier. I used 7 out of the 9 shadows. So these 2 here I did not use, but I did use this more satiny finished one here. These ones are very strongly blue based, and I just didn't, with the shadows that I did use, I didn't feel that it really jived with them as much. And that is one thing I would say with this palette, is that these 2 are a little bit of an outlier in that you have a lot more sort of plum tones over here and even down into these ones here. And these ones are very blue. This has got quite the reflect on it there. That's not to say that I'm upset with it, because if I really wanted to just spotlight one of those shadows, I could bring in another palette. That doesn't upset me, and frankly, I don't know anybody who only has one palette, so I don't think that it would be a deal breaker for really anybody. But I like that they have it in there, to be honest, because it does add more variety to what you're getting. That aside, I used this one on my lower lashes today and had no issues with it. I had already done my face makeup by the time I did my lower lashes, and I didn't have any problems with it creating fallout on my cheeks or just being an unblendable mess. It was very nice, and these shimmer ones don't produce any kick up in the pan, yet still come off on the brush nicely, and I didn't have to really work at building up the pigmentation on my eyes. Moving on to the foiled shadows here, so I have used all 3 of them today. I have these 2 on my lids and then this one in my inner corner. Excuse me, I'm still sick. What I can say, and you can see it more so with this shadow up here, is that these ones down the middle, so the foiled shadows, are a little crumbly in the pan. Not anything terrible, but something that you should take note of, simply because I think that it's going to impact the way that people use the shadows. If you go in with a very stiff brush, you're going to crumble the pan. That's all that's going to happen. I have a Huda Beauty shader brush that is very densely packed. I did use it, but it created a dent in the shadow, so I had to go in very lightly and just sort of skim it across the top rather than try to pick up pigment, if that makes any sense. So softer brushes are going to probably work a little bit better with these. However, I think the best way to use them is with your finger, honestly. You're going to get the best color payoff by doing it that way. When I just picked it up on the brush, it really wasn't doing a lot on the lid. When I sprayed it with Fix Plus, that really amped it up. So I would recommend that if you are going to use a brush with this, you go in with a gentle hand, spend the time to build up the pigmentation, and use a setting spray, like pick it up with the brush, spray your brush, apply, or just go in with your fingers. That's the best way that you're going to be able to get the pigmentation from these three in the middle. That is not a deal breaker to me. That does not bother me, but I did want to mention it in case anybody picks this up and is like, this is not working, this is unpigmented crap. It's not, it's just a different way of approaching the shadows. That's all that it comes down to. Also, I didn't experience any problems with the shadows blending on top of each other. There was no muddiness. It's still, you can see the distinct colors that are going on. They didn't all just sort of meld together. And I think every shadow that's in here does bring something different to the table, as you can see with the arm swatches there. Although there may be sort of a running theme, obviously, of purple, but you know, down here, the plum tones, they're all very distinct and unique. And that is one thing that I really appreciate about these Huda Beauty mini palettes, is that you only get 9 shadows and there's no overlap in the shades in any of the palettes that she's put out. And I love that, because I'd rather only have 9 and have 9 colors than have 35 pans and only have 9 colors. I'm looking at you, Morphe. The very last thing that I want to do before I jump into the tutorial is something that I haven't yet done, is take a look at some of the other palettes. I have all of her other palettes except for the other 4 in this new limited edition collection. So I brought out the 3 that do contain purples, and I just want to see if there's any dupes, just to see. So let's start with the Mauve Obsessions. This is part of the permanent line, and this was one of the original palettes that came out. So there's the Mauve Obsessions, and there is obviously the Amethyst one here. There's only one shade that looks like it may be similar, and it's that dark eggplanty kind of color here. This one in the Mauve Obsessions is definitely more brown in nature. So here they are here. Come on, you can do it. So this is from the Mauve, no, this one's from the Mauve Obsessions, and this one is from the Amethyst, and you can see that they are definitely not the same shade. Naturally, I get one swatch in and my camera overheats. It's Murphy's Law at work. So while it was cooling down, I did some swatching. So, these 2 here. This is the purple that is contained in the Electric Obsessions palette, and this is the purple from the Amethyst. And you can see that they are rather different. This one has a more strong blue undertone to it than this one, and this one is much deeper in nature. These 3 are comparing shades from the Gemstone Obsessions palette. This is one that came out, I believe, in springtime or late winter, like March-ish, I can't remember. So this shadow here is from Gemstones. This one is from Amethyst. They are fairly close. This one's deeper. This one is a little bit more purpley, I guess. I don't really know how to describe that, but they're close but not dupes. Again, this one is from the Gemstone and this one is from the Amethyst. Similar sort of ideas there, similar reflect to them. This one is darker, but they are quite similar. This one has a little bit more of like a plum / burgundy undertone to it. If I twist, you can kind of see it there, the reflect on it. But they are similar. And then finally, again, we have Gemstone and Amethyst over here. And while they are both light, shimmery shadows, there is a difference in the undertone there. So the whole point of that little exercise was just to see whether or not there has been duplication of shades, and I really can't say that there is. There are similarities, but not exact dupes, so I'm happy to see that. Alright, and those are my thoughts on the palette. Overall, I'm very happy with it, and I'm very excited to get my hands on the blue one and the green one and potentially the red one. The only one I don't really want is the orangey brown one, but I may just pick it up for the sake of completeness. Anyways, let's get into the tutorial. So as usual, I'm going to start off by priming my eyes with the Soft Ochre Paint Pot from MAC. And I'm just using a Real Techniques concealer brush to do that. Just a little angled brush like that. I will often set that primer with either a translucent powder or an eyeshadow that's pretty similar to my own skin color, but for today, because I want these shadows to be as vibrant as possible, I'm just going to leave it unset. And I'm going to go in with this shade down here with a fluffy blending brush. Then I'm going to blend that from the crease upwards towards the brow bone in that transition area and just buff it back and forth. To help establish a bit of a gradient in terms of the shades, I'm going to use this color up here on a smaller blending brush, and I'm going to put that more towards the crease. I'll use the original brush and just buff out where those two shadows meet. Then I'm going to use a more defined brush here. It's sort of like a souped up pencil brush, really. It does have a bit of flexibility in it, so it allows for more precise placement of the shadows, but can still blend things out a little bit as well. And I'm going to pick up this darkest shade here in the palette. And then I'm going to apply that to the outer corner and the inner corner of my eyelid, and then slowly blend it up through the crease as well. And it's okay if it's not perfectly blended like it is right here, because we're going to be putting a different shadow on top of that. Before I move on to the lid shadows though, I do like to go back in and blend some more. I just find it's easier to blend at each stage than it is to try to do it all at the very end. Next up, I took a Real Techniques detailer brush and I picked up this shade at the top here and then sprayed it with a bit of Fix Plus. Then I just patted that, overlapping not fully into the center, but where that darker shadow is and where the blank space begins, kind of on the edge of those two on each side. Then I took a very small flat shading brush here and picked up the lightest of the shimmer shadows in the palette. And again, applied a little bit of Fix Plus to it. And then did a little bit more blending, because that's the name of the game. So you can see there's been a little bit of glitter falling down from those shimmery shadows. Nothing major, but that's why I didn't do my face makeup before I used this palette. I'm just going to wipe that away. I'm going to go ahead and do my face makeup and then I'll come back to finish up the eyes. BRB. I took a very flat shader brush here and picked up that dark matte shade again and then just worked that right into the lash line on my lower lashes. Then I took a slightly more dense brush here and picked up this shade at the top corner here. I took a very small pencil brush and picked up this shade in the middle here and used that as my inner corner highlight. With what was left on the brush, I just placed that under the arch of the brow. There's really not a brow highlighting shade in this palette, so I don't think I want a purple highlight that's too strong, but there is a bit of reflection there, so it does sort of brighten that area up a little bit. And that's it for shadows. So I am going to do liner, mascara, potentially lashes off camera, come back in, show you the final look, and we will wrap it up. And there is the final look. For lashes, I used the Velour Effortless Lashes in Just a Hint. Lipstick is Back Talk from Urban Decay, and the liner is the Fenty Fly Liner Liquid Liner from Fenty, obviously. So that's the final look. That's all I got to say. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video, and I will see you in my next one. Until then, just be a decent human being. Bye for now.